Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever this finds you, and welcome to another podcast. This afternoon, I've been joined by Professor Chris Shambrook. Chris Shambrook is a sports psychologist, most famously, I guess, known for his work with the all-conquering British rowing team, but also in developing high-performance frameworks and cultures, a performance recipe that I've used with great success over the years. And it'll be lovely to hear Chris unpack that this afternoon. What are the behaviours that are required to drive the results we all want, aligned to the ambitions and purpose of the organisations within which we work? I'm Tim Kirby, Chief Executive of Releaf, and it's a joy this afternoon. I'm sat down with Professor Chris Shambrook. Chris and I have known each other, 5-7 years. Chris will probably say it feels a lot longer. And it's been looking forward to this all week. One of the things that we've talked about a lot through Releaf's launch, which was February last year, to a business now that's 100 strong, is how do management become leaders, the general recipe of performance that becomes high performance. And I've been privileged enough to work with Chris over a number of outings. The last one was with Relex, which was a FTSE top 6, I think now. And we took a business that was $80 million in annual turnover and turned it into a business that's $240 million, growing at 21% when we finished. And so without further ado, let me introduce you to Mr. Professor Chris Shambrook. Give us a bit of your background, Chris.
Professor, Doctor, I don't mind, Tim.
Whatever
Chris,
it is.
Chris will absolutely do. So, yeah, and it's really looking forward to the conversation, Tim, as well, because, all the conversations that we've had over the years about high performance just really plays into my sweet spot, having come from a background in performance psychology, working over 5 Olympic Games with the British rowing team, taking sports psychology into that world, but at the same time working in lots of different organisations, taking those same high performance psychology principles, human performance principles, and actually bringing them to life in much more challenging environments that are on the field of play every day, rather than training most of the time for acute moments of excellence. And so that background of performance psychology in laboratories of sport and other high performance arenas, that's just the background, and that's what we do at Planet K2, is we help people see performance as a force for good, not a problem to be solved.
When I talk about you, which I do an alarming amount, because I've learned so much over the years in the accessibility that you've made the language of performance. I'm very cynical about most performance coaching because it gets lost in buzzwords, silly phrases, right? And I think that enables people to tune out. And what I've always tuned into is the language you've used that have made things that are very difficult to grow culturally within an organisation, which is high performance, and make it accessible to people. Let's start with one, right? So the thing that I stand on more than anything else in the work we've done together is the difference between results and performance, and that people confuse results with performance. Results is an outcome, performance is a behaviour. So help me just unpack that a little bit for our listeners.
Yeah, and it's a really important one to unpack, and that difference that I talked about in the world of sport, where they train much more than they compete. So they compete for the results. So every 4 years in Olympic Games, where you know what it is that you want as the result, and you know the results that you need to deliver on along the way to qualify and then to go through the round. So you know what it takes to result your way to success. But if you only do 14 races a year, then you've really got to spend most of your time working on the ingredients that are going to give you confidence.
Resulting your way to success. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Performance and results are really mutually dependent. Yeah. But if we only ever talk about the result, we try and get the result by talking about the result, rather than we get the result by understanding the inputs that will give us more likelihood of delivering the performance that will add up to all of those things that make the result more likely.
So it becomes this focus on behaviours.
On behaviours, on processes, on winning habits, winning ingredients, but we're focused on way more than simply the outcome. And we always used to talk about the fact, the business world, typically leads in the same way as if a football manager just turned up each day for training and said, right, I want you to win 4-0 at the weekend, and the board have asked me to make sure that you score a goal just before half time, because people then go and spend more money because they're feeling happier. And if we can get a goal in somewhere in the game that is a highlight goal, we'll get more money that we can use from a content perspective. So that's what we need to do at the weekend. You haven't done any practice, you haven't done any training, you haven't helped the players get ready to play against a particular opponent. So you turn up on the Saturday and the manager's still kind of going, right, it's nearly half time. No one's scored yet. We're supposed to be 2-0 up. Who's going to score me a goal? And the manager's starting to distract people, talking about the result rather than they've actually spent all of the week practicing how they want the game to go, practicing the tactics they're going to use, and each individual player is making sure they're contributing as well as possible, and they're keeping playing and maximising the chances of getting the performance, which gets the goals, that gets the results.
So how I replay that, because obviously it's clear you speaking now that it was definitely stolen from you, and I would characterise this as low performance management, leadership, but I think it's also an experience that most of us have had in our lives in terms of low performance from leadership or management. And that's the running up and down on the side of the pitch shouting, can somebody please score a goal? Which is a complete waste of time. And that's that results focus. But if no one knows, to stretch the metaphor, how to move the ball between each other, how to control it, or even where the goal is, you can run up and down all day screaming, can someone score a goal?
Yeah, absolutely. And it becomes a distraction because everyone knows what they're on the pitch for and they're just being reminded that they haven't delivered on the ultimate end game.
Yeah.
Rather than what can I do to support you to be focused in such a way that, we increase the chances of having a good move.
What you've just said there, results focus as a distraction.
Yeah.
Right, just constantly shouting about the results that are required, distracting everybody from actually understanding what's needed.
20 years ago, we were working with a business that had weekly revenue commitment meetings. So they are going around the room kind of going, right, how much revenue are you committing to this week? Yeah. It's rather than behavior commitment meetings and also performance commitment. How are you going to develop an opportunity this week? What's your tactic going to be? What support are you going to be using? How are you playing the game in front of you that you've opened up to this point? And so I get why people want a revenue commitment meeting because that's ultimately what's going to get reported. But you then end up teaching people to be better at forecast variance explanation than you do at actually selling.
Right, let's go. The forecast variance explanation, right? How many people listening to this, and I've certainly experienced, you sit down on first week of a month, first Monday of the week, and you're asked what happened last week.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And in my experience, what you'll get from the individuals around the table in front of their peers will be, they will validate why the conditions were the conditions and the results that were achieved were really strong.
Yeah.
And you'll never, ever hear them talking about, well, I didn't turn up on Monday. I was hungover on Wednesday. I didn't fancy it Friday because it was a bit too sunny. Or I'm actually just not very good at what I do. Let's talk more about that.
Yeah. But again, that rhythm gets people really good at post-rationalizing the past and creating a reverse story. Well, this must have been the things that got the results. Rather than in a high-performance environment, we're committing to how we're going to behave with confidence that will lead to an outcome that will give us another foothold to go again. Yeah, so we're in a feed-forward environment rather than explain the recent past.
If we're feeding forward, we have to understand what we're feeding forward to.
So there is a result, there's a goal, and there's versions of the goal as well. So we might, if we've set a target, we might absolutely have the best run possible, and the target looks at a slightly different level than if we're in a really solid stream of performance. But there's also a minimum level that we might want to get as well. So again, even the way the targets are set is very, you either hit it or you haven't.
And how does that play back to your experience in the sporting world? So you dealt with elite athletes.
Yeah.
If I remember right, it was the gold medal winning rowing team?
Yeah, from 1997 through till 2019. I did some stuff with Tokyo as well.
And I'm sure I've heard you talk, and I'd love everybody to hear it as well, about the magic happens in the work that you're avoiding, the boring basics, the grind, that success isn't very glamorous. We all want to take a selfie on top of the mountain, but to get there, it's one foot in front of the other when you're deep in the valley and it's pouring with rain. And the easiest thing to do is what most people have done, is turn back.
Yeah.
And it's the repetition and consistency
of
what are really quite mundane behaviours in what I'll loosely call success. That's always been my finding. Did that come from sport?
So sport has definitely been an environment where the marginal gains and the brilliant basics are an important combination. You've got to be fantastic at the fundamentals, and you've got to be fascinated with the art of doing something that is normally taken for granted, but you're trying to do it more and more effectively with less and less effort. Right. Which then means you get to turn your attention to the things that will make a nice value add, the marginal gains. So we got Wimbledon on at the moment.
Yep.
Yeah. So the great tennis players are practicing serving all the time.
Yeah.
They're not kind of going, I've won a few matches, I don't need to practice serving anymore. Novak Djokovic was talking this week about mastering his ball toss so that he can have the same ball toss but serve to 4 different positions so the opponent can't read it. And he's developed that in the last year or so, having already won 24 majors.
Do you remember we shared a stage at a global leadership event that you supported me running in my previous life?
Yeah.
And I remember one of the big things we did at the beginning was me and you spoke, and on the background on the screen was Steph Curry shooting 3-pointers from the corner.
105 consecutively.
And he did 105 3-pointers from the corner while we spoke. And it was to try and illustrate that it's the repetition.
And the fascination with the skill that is fundamental that you can never leave behind. But when you're able to do that level of fundamental skill so efficiently and effectively, what does it then mean you can do in moments of real opportunity? So you see Steph Curry in the last 3 minutes of the Olympic final last year. The consecutive 3-pointers that he shot with different degrees of difficulty were a function that he can take the stationary shot really superbly with massive confidence. So it allows him then to play the game in front of him with a curiosity and a fascination and a degree of belief.
What I often see from a lectern or from a training session or from leadership speeches, whatever they might be, TED Talk and the rest, is it's easy to have a nice sporting analogy.
Yeah.
How do you create the connection between Steph Curry shooting 105 3-pointers and how that becomes the behaviours that are required for success within a high-performance culture in a business?
Yeah, and I think that is inviting everyone to become experts in their performance. So, and again, if you're fed a narrative of the result is the only thing that matters, you're not being asked to deconstruct what it takes to deliver the result.
So how do you take people there? How do you get people to be an expert in their own performance?
A really straightforward way is to start thinking about, right, given the best performer that you've worked with and experienced, what are the things that you've seen them doing on a day-to-day basis? What are their habits? What are the technical skills that they're really great at? What knowledge do they have that you know is central to them being an expert in that field of play? You can build up a picture of what it takes to be effective. And then you can ask each person, right, relative to that individual, where would you rate yourself? If they're a 10 out of 10 based upon what you've seen, where are you on that scale? And how far have you developed? And what might the next iteration be for you in the next 3 months, given the environment that you're in and the business that you're contributing to? What's the development opportunity that makes you fit for purpose rather than just developing for the sake of it?
So let's keep going there, because I love that. And one of the things you and I have done in the past with groups of people, if you ask everybody to write down, everybody's got the same function, the same role. They exist in the same part of an organisation.
Yeah.
And let's say there's 10 people for the sake of a round number. Their outcomes will be different.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But if the conditions are the same for everybody and people's outcomes are different, there's only one variable, and that is their behaviours.
Yeah.
So if you ask, it's always an interesting exercise. If you write down, if you get 10 people in a room that all do the same thing, that all understand the results that are required, and you get them all to write down the behaviours that are required to get the results, I've always been fascinated by the weird and the wonderful, the lack of insight, sometimes the absolute brilliance. But what's always been the case is the lack of uniformity.
Yeah, the lack of uniformity. But that's where, from the sport perspective, that's the role of the coaches to be the individuals who are providing the starting point that says, look, while you're part of this organisation that's seeking to deliver this success, these are some of the brilliant basics that we would expect to see in everyone in your role. So let's get a shared understanding of what the expectations.
That's a tell, though, isn't it? Right?
Well, no, but that's using expertise. So the coaches in the world of sport, and I've said this a lot in the past. I will, you could see 2 equally successful coaches. They will have slightly different philosophies as to what it takes to be a great athlete, but they will coach with confidence that their version is the right one to be coaching with. But you pay leaders in the organisation to do some of the foundation work that allows people to then build from a shared set of performance ingredients, but have their own flair and add their own sense to it.
And that foundational work, I've always gone about it in that way, right? First of all, can the people that you're asking to work collectively to achieve something, can they first of all describe what excellence looks like in terms of behaviours as a collective, right? And asking them, if you like, to do that exercise, write down the top 6 behaviours that are required to excel in the role you've got. And when you share those out in the room, it's always interesting to look on everybody's faces. Wow, we've all got this completely, there's a Venn diagram in there for sure.
Yeah. But there'll be similarities in there as well. But from the leadership point of view, given we're this type of organisation, we say this is our mission, we say these are our values, so these are some of the kind of generic behaviours that go across the board.
Yeah.
What's the role-specific version of that behaviour? So what are we? So we're going to prioritise some of those shared ingredients more than others, because actually, while you're here, this is how we play. So it's like a football team.
Yeah.
We're going to play a certain formation. We're going to play a certain form of tactics. We know you can play in many ways, but while you're here are some of the qualities and characteristics that help us play as a team, because we're trying to aggregate the expertise. We're not trying to suppress individuality, but we're trying to take the individuals and have a shared mental model from which we kind of go, right, I'm contributing to this rather than I've got freedom just to be me.
If we begin then by going to a place that says, let's explain low performance, right?
Yeah.
Because you mentioned, I can't remember the phrase, right? I'll try and get you to repeat it. Low performance is where you become an expert in feeding back validation as to why the results were the results.
Yeah.
Right. And the investment, I've often thought, from people that were undoubtedly talented, the investment they made in conjuring up the most fantastical, weird, wonderful reasons why the conditions got in the way of the results.
Yeah.
Yet the very person next to them doing the same job operated in exactly the same conditions.
Yeah. And so part of being expert is the ability to understand and accept and solve the problem of how to perform in a current set of conditions. So that, you know the phrase I always use, too many people at work sound like they're swimmers who are complaining they're getting wet.
Absolutely right. And when you were interviewed for the job, there was a pool in the room.
There was a pool. You were going to be wet. Did you miss an induction process that, you wanted a dry sport and not a wet sport type of thing? So given that you are a swimmer, there are certain things that you should anticipate and you should be able to problem solve for going fast through water on a regular basis. Complain about the temperature and the level of chlorine, but it's still water, and that, I'm afraid, that comes with the territory. But again, the sport perspective says, look, if we've got an outdoor sport, we know that the conditions are going to change. We're going to be in a different climate. We're going to be in different sort of wind conditions. We're going to be against different opposition. Part of the fun is solving the problem of how do I understand these conditions, get my head around them and accept them, and then think about which of my particular performance ingredients become more relevant because of the conditions. And the key bit with this is if the conditions are helping you, you don't just sit back and go, oh, that's good, the conditions are helping. You kind of go, the conditions are helping everyone. We've got to use the helpful conditions more effectively than anyone else. In the same way that if the conditions are a bit more challenging, well, we can moan about the conditions, or we can solve the problem of what good looks like in these conditions and do it.
The conditions are the conditions. I've enjoyed in the last year, if you like. So, Releaf launched in February last year. There were 6 of us in a spreadsheet and a large amount of investment that we really didn't want to waste. Yeah. And so we all stared at the spreadsheet, and you start off by heroics. Okay, everybody is doing everything, and you understand fanatically the granular behaviours required because we've done this before, right? It's familiar. As the organisation grows, so we've gone from £20,000 of turnover in February last year to July this year, which will be £2 million worth of turnover. By the end of the year, at an annual run rate, we'll be a £60 million business just doing what we're doing. Yeah. So now there's 100 people. And what we try very much to do is grow talent from within the organisation rather than bring in seasoned talent. So I think culturally that creates, our own brand of whatever we believe is culture, which is behaviours-led, not results-led. And the long monologue gets me to what I see in people that are stepping into leadership or management roles for the first time. It's the easiest thing for them to do is to lower their standards, to get closer to what people find that they can achieve and not providing them the stretch because they want to avoid the difficult conversation. How do you think that focus on behaviours supports new management, new leadership, new people to those positions of responsibility, and giving them the tools to create the conditions for people. Does that make sense?
It does, but I think what you want to do is you want to build in the rhythms and the habits that make everyone always regularly thinking about, right, where are we at? So what are we going to do next? What's the next result that we want built upon our recent history? How will we go about delivering that result? What behaviors, what approaches will we promote? And as a result of that, how will we change the conditions for ourselves? Because when we change the conditions for ourselves by being more successful, we've now just presented ourselves with the new leadership.
Talk about changing the conditions for yourself. How does that square the circle with the conditions are the conditions?
Well, no, so you look at the success that you've had commercially.
Yep.
You've changed the conditions by now being a more commercially successful organisation, which means that there is a different relationship with the financial components.
Yep. The behaviours required at a $50 million business
exactly
are a lot different than a $20,000 business.
And you've got to start to increasingly be able to ignore the size of the number, because actually that, people might start fearing failure or stop, so they might actually sort of think about protecting, look at how successful we've been, we better not mess up, rather than how did we grow the last bit of success from where we were to where we are.
Well, there's a couple of things in there, I think, right, to pick up on. One is the number might get bigger, but actually the behaviours just become more granular. What do I mean by that? Let's use Releaf as an example. We onboard 1,000 new patients each month. Mm-hmm. And we've got 12,000 patients served. We've written 45,000 prescriptions since the beginning of January this year. And what we talk about internally a lot is that we haven't got 12,000 patients.
Yeah.
We have one patient. We just happen to have 12,000 instances of that patient. Because if you and I did the marketing, if we did the onboarding of it's a customer, or in Releaf's case, it's a patient, and we then ran the ongoing relationship with that customer or patient, and we did it would all be quite good, because we'd be fixated on it, because it was fundamental to the investment that we had made personally. And it's how do you maintain that attachment to the behaviours required to get the results you want at a level of 1, not 12,000. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. But that gives you two things. That means that, one, culturally, you've got a compelling shared focus of the single patient satisfaction.
Yes.
So are we as an organisation thinking about patient number one?
Yes.
And is that our focus? And if we are thinking about patient number one, what are my behaviours that now contribute to an entire system that is in service of patient number one? And how do I keep doing that? And then the other thing, as you're growing, how do I make sure that I spread that knowledge and share that knowledge? Because part of my responsibility is to now set it free within the culture so that we can become a highly successful culture. And that's some of the stuff I saw in the rowing team, is where, I joined the team where Steve Redgrave is going for his 5th gold medal, and Matthew Pinson is going for his 3rd at that point, I think, as well. So,
terrifying team of people to join, no?
But also, you look at that from a confidence contagion potential. How do you then start spreading that belief so it isn't just about 2 people, it becomes about 4 people, so they win with James Crackler and Tim Foster?
What did you say? The
confidence contagion.
Confidence contagion. If you make the ability of others so much beyond what you think you're personally capable of, then in my experience, people check out. So it's how do you make sure that, if I walked into a room and had to start rowing, I wouldn't want the benchmark to be Steve Redgrave.
Exactly, but you wouldn't be doing that because you're not an international athlete. But in your world, you're selecting people who come in where that is an appropriate role model. Yeah. You're not starting with novices. You are starting with people. I recognise that you were once where I am now. So I think learning from you provides me with some fast-track confidence. Well, one of the key sources of...
And that translates.
It does. One of the key sources of confidence that everyone talks about is vicarious experience.
What does that mean?
Well, it means that I can steal confidence from people that I think I'm like. So if I think, well, if you've done it, I can do it. So I need to look for points of similarity to give me then, well, I know I'm now part of a culture where I see enough people like me. And this works the same for you with your patients. As you know, you're trying to appeal to patients to kind of go, hey, look at some of the videos of people who are like you, that have got experiences like you, that you can be confident that this thing works. It works exactly the same culturally for your organization and everyone within it to kind of go, we're confident that we're spreading the expertise and the knowledge that means we're all great performers that contribute to our culture, where it ladders up with the patient number one focus is getting ever more efficient, ever more effective, but it lives in more of us rather than resides in one or two people who have been here from the outset.
Let's have a talk about that then. So as the business scales, increasingly you've got to rely on people, consistent and repetition of the behaviours when nobody's watching.
Yeah.
Right? So there's three words that we've used in the past: autonomy, mastery, and purpose.
Yeah.
Right? If everybody doesn't understand the purpose, then forget the word team. There is no team. Right? You have to be aligned to purpose. How do you create the conditions where people are able to work with autonomy, demonstrate the mastery that they assured you they had at interview, and to get it to do that when nobody's watching? Because that's where scale for me lives.
And I think that is the invitation in the contract, that you're coming into an organisation that is ambitious. We're really ambitious for us, and we're going to hold more ambition for you than perhaps you hold for yourself. Yeah. But that does mean that we can approach every day with, we're connected to a purpose. And so every day is the chance to master what we've already mastered, but do it more efficiently and more effectively.
And what's the most effective way, sorry to interrupt you, that you've found to connect people to purpose?
We want to keep talking about the fact that if you were not here contributing to our purpose, what wouldn't you be able to develop? What personal development opportunity would you not be able to experience? How would you not be able to grow as a function of that? Because we want to contract on the basis of the opportunity. If you're here for 18 months, let's make sure that your growth within that 18 months is mutually beneficial. But this is about growing here rather than growing somewhere else. So, we need you and you need us, and we may as well have some fun seeing what positive impact we can have for each other's careers along the way. But I think you keep recontracting that much more frequently. You don't do it at point of joining and hope people don't forget it. You keep doing it very regularly in terms of, every quarter.
And it can't be a tell.
Again, and it can't be, but increasingly it becomes how are we doing this in a united way? Because, you're talking about autonomy, mastery and purpose. That's self-determination theory. And the purpose bit is about sense of belonging.
Yep.
It's actually about, I feel part of something.
Part of a gang,
exactly.
And that's super powerful.
Exactly. So what do I need to do to keep you feeling more part of that? Feel that your voice is even more powerful and valuable because you feel responsible for creating the culture and contributing to it, as well as consuming it and getting value from it. So you get people who are citizens of your organisation rather than people who are consumers of a commercial opportunity.
And I find that those moments of reflection sometimes where you think, you know what, we've got this. Yeah. That wonderful feeling that pressure is a privilege, but it doesn't always feel like that. But when a business has got its tail up and it's got momentum, and you can feel there's a huge, not only addressable, but equally an obtainable market, and you're in your moment, that getting everybody to influence each other all of the time, aligned to that purpose, is the most powerful thing. I think it has to be intentional. Yeah. As well. You've got to go out of your way to seek those people that may be somewhere else in their headspace or around the organisation, and bringing them back into this gang.
And remembering that it's okay for everyone to kind of be it's like a dimmer switch. Sometimes we're on full brightness and I'm really in, but other times just, my level will have dropped off a bit. It's still on, but we're accepting that people aren't going to be absolutely fully on all of the time. And quite frankly, if they are, they're going to burn out. Yeah. So when I'm fully on, I'm going to spread that light to others. But when actually the intensity isn't quite so bright, I know that I've got other people who are sort of creating, so they're giving me the invitation to step into their light. Do you remember
we talked about that as the peloton, right? You create a group of high performers, right, that have learned how to get out of, if I'm stretching the cycling metaphor, that peloton, have learned to get out the saddle a bit quicker. Yeah. They can see the hill coming and they've conserved some energy. Yeah. They're also helping each other. They're taking it in turns to move to the front. Yeah. And you find this group of people that become high performance, that club, that gang that we want to be part of. As that high performance peloton moves out, the gap between high performance that's become normalized and low performance that's become alienated. As that gap moves, you find people self-select.
Yeah.
Right? Because they don't want to be part of this gang because it requires high performance, and not everybody's up for high
and that's
performance.
it. So the pressure is a privilege bit. Pressure is also an expectation and a pressure, and it needs managing, and we need to have compassion and respect for those people who are coming on the journey. And we also need to have similar respect for people who find their level and kind of go, I've loved this, but I think I've reached my ceiling.
Yeah. And not lower your standards to that level.
Yeah.
The standard is the standard.
Yeah.
And, I always laugh. I've got a son, and bless him, he loves football. He's never ever going to play for Manchester United. He's just not good enough. Right? So it's pointless as pretending that everybody can always perform at a certain level.
Yeah.
I don't subscribe to the recruit for will, train for skill. Right? I just don't believe that. I said, so people are capable of operating at different altitudes, and high performance also isn't a choice everybody wants to make.
Exactly. So I first saw this back in 2013. Someone had graphed all of the people who had finished marathons in the year, and it was a beautiful, normally distributed graph of everyone who'd run a marathon. But there were some really interesting characteristics about it. You had the world's fastest time, and there was a very small amount of people in there. But then when you went from about 2 hours 15, there was a spike, and then 2 hours 30, there was a spike, 2 hours 45, there was a spike, 3 hours, there was a spike.
Right.
When you have culturally relevant standards, people who have made the grade will make additional effort to meet that level.
Agreed.
And as a high-performance organisation, you're getting your equivalent of people who can kind of go, we love people who are running for health and for benefit, but they're not our high performers. The people who are looking at a 3:30, a 3:15, they're in because we know they are runners.
Yes.
And now we can start helping distribute our talent across how many 2 hours 45 runners do we need? How many 3 hours runners do we need? What are we going to need in a couple of years' time in terms of how that distribution changes? And you get to play with, you've selected the talent who are capable of doing the things and growing, and you help each other find the level.
And how does that translate then to practicalities, right? This is great. I love this conversation. It's fantastic. I hope people are connecting with some of the content. But there's one thing, we can all be millionaires by anecdote, can't we? Right?
Yeah.
How does the anecdote become a practical workbook that is a framework for high performance, back to where we started this conversation, that people feel is accessible?
That's about really thinking about our culture is fundamentally a really high performance development plan for everyone who chooses to come into it. And we regularly want to be talking to each other about how have we developed from both a performance and a results perspective, and what are we going to do next in service of our goals to develop a bit further. So you need regular habits and regular rituals that feel like people are being coached consistently to become more efficient and more effective within the reality of the diary. And the concept of your diary is your development plan.
Yes.
How can we start making sure that there are regular team conversations, individual conversations that kind of go, our job is to not leave development
and when you look at your diary, right, how many people look at their diary and say, I've carved out certain blocks of time for my own development, and I've been very thoughtful in what development means. Who do I want to surround myself with? What do I want to read? What do I want to talk to?
So I'll give a very live example. So, we were talking ahead of this. I've done a few podcasts in the past, and I said, right, I need succinct answers. This is a practice opportunity for me to develop succinctness of answer. I can talk, but can I talk in a way that is succinct? That's the same for hundreds of meetings that people are having every day. I've got the chance to develop a specific communication upgrade.
Yes.
But what exists in terms of a sales conversation, from a marketing person being able to share an idea in a way that resonates more quickly?
Look, I'll include, when this podcast goes out and gets posted, a link to, I'm not just saying it because you're here, what I think is the best, by a long way, leadership manual. It's your 21 rules, an orange book.
Yeah.
If we could pick a couple of those out, what number is, I'll put you on the spot here, I don't know if you remember the actual numbers of what's the number that's about, if you need a development plan, then what?
Well, so I think it's rule 15, everyone is on a development plan.
Yeah.
So it's called your job. But there's another.
Let's just do that, right? Everybody's on a development plan. It's called your job.
Well, so the other one is everyone should have a performance improvement plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So most organizations will put people on a PIP when they want to manage them out of a business. You're kind of going, right.
Or when their performance has fallen to such a level.
When their results. Typically. So they kind of go, oh, right, we've left you alone and you've not delivered. So we're now going to give you a performance improvement plan rather than, welcome to the business, you're on a performance improvement plan because we're really excited about how good we can be together. Every day is the performance improvement plan. So there's a few of the rules that are just created for provocation.
I'll put a link. Honestly, I would please recommend anybody, back to that accessibility. I think that it makes a lot of things that high performance individuals know, but they've never been able to articulate them effectively. And I think culturally, one of the most important things for any team, right, business, sport, is the ability to articulate the behaviours that are required to get the results we want. Because you can demonstrate the behaviours.
Yeah.
Often I think it makes them almost unattainable because, well, that's you know, God, you've come down from Mars. I can't possibly achieve that.
Yeah.
Does that resonate in any of your experiences?
That's part of the challenge as you grow. Actually, if I can make my expertise explicit for other people to benefit from it, that's true high performance.
Yeah.
That's the reality rather than, oh, you're some mystical person who, so if you can't make it explicit, it's not useful. So again, we go back to where we started. Performance is doing the things you need to do to get the results that you want. If I've got someone who delivers the performance and the results follow, I really want to understand those performance because now we've got repeatability and sustainability. Someone who gets the results but they can't articulate the performance, I'll conclude they're lucky. Someone who's delivering the performance that looks like good that we've defined but the results don't follow, I'm backing them.
Yes.
Because we know that this might be about being slightly more condition smart or actually kind of, just upping one or two of those ingredients in a slightly better way. So we'll back those people. But for people who are consistently not delivering the performance and the results aren't following, are we setting the wrong goals in the first place or actually has it been a bad selection process?
And listen, Chris, I could do this for another 3 hours. I think there's some symmetry and where you've landed there, right? I won't repeat it properly, but the success is about doing the things you need to do to get the results you want. And I'm really looking forward to bringing you into the business. I think we're going to do some stuff in September. As I say, we've grown exponentially. And whilst that's super exciting, what we do need to do is create a framework of understanding that demystifies for people that are new to people leadership roles, what are the behaviours that create the conditions for talent to thrive?
And there's a version of high performance for everyone. You can fulfill your own high performance potential. And then it's about seeing whether that is actually a contributor to the high performance organisation that's been created for people to express that expertise in.
So what I suggest we do is why don't we do this again in maybe this side of Christmas, maybe just after Christmas. And we'll get you to talk with one of our emerging superstars that are actually running this business on a day-to-day basis, the business I refer to being our business, which is Releaf. And it would be great for them to talk to you about how they found that process.
Yeah. And that makes it really accessible. Absolutely.
Yeah, we've done this. We've talked about it. How does it feel for someone to have been through that process? So Chris, listen, thank you so much for sharing your experience this afternoon. And
been a pleasure and looking forward to creating a few more sort of bits of evidence that this stuff works rather than just, millionaire through stories.
Amen to that. Thank you very much. Well, thanks very much for listening to another episode of our podcast with Professor Chris Shambrook. Fascinating as ever to hear him unpack the recipe that sits behind high performance. It's not about focusing on results, and don't confuse results with performance. Performance is about behaviours, and that's a message that will always live with me and I hope resonates with some of you listening today. So as I say, find us wherever it is you normally go to find your podcasts, and thanks again, and we'll see you next time.